On this episode of Locked On Angels, what does Christian Moore need to do to make the opening day roster? Should he even be considered? And if so, where does he play? What does he need to prove? Let's talk about it. It's time to get Locked On with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. I'm going to show off the shirt for the video side. Come on.
There it is.
There we are. We're here 5 days a week talking Angels baseball with you. Of course, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Like I was saying, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, every single weekday, we're talking about Angels baseball here on the show. We're so glad you chose to be with us today. On today's show, we are talking about Christian Moore, as Mike mentioned at the top of the show. Where's he going to play? And what's he have to do to make the team? Then Yoan Moncada shared some thoughts about his time with the White Sox and his future with the Angels. Mike, I want to talk about those things, but I want to get to yesterday's game because there was a lot of intriguing pitching stuff happening. It was not a fun game to watch because it was 2-1, hardly any offense, but we did see José Soriano get the start in this one, and we got to see a few interesting arms like George Klassen, who is one of the Angels' 3 top 100 prospects. So let's talk about José Soriano, what he did in yesterday's game.
Yeah, Johnny set at 97, 98 with his sinker, already looking good, already throwing hard, first start of spring. Loved seeing that. Started out the game working on it, getting a feel about that, and then it led to 2 ground outs to Arise, and then old friend alert, Tyler Wade was there. And then Machado swung over the first sinker that was up in the zone for a double, and then there was a nice knuckle curve to get Jason Hayward to strike out looking. So that was his start, John, and he already looked pretty dominant. I think Soriano is a guy that potentially could be a really good breakout candidate for the Halos this season. And a lot of baseball people are talking about how impressed they were with just his adjustment last year to become a starter. And already just looking at him yesterday in the first inning, really strong. Then John, second inning, super quick for Soriano, wasn't it?
Yeah, ground out on a slider. He had a walk and a wild pitch to put the Padres hitter on third. That one was way in the dirt, and it just shot up Logan O'Hoppy's glove. It was kind of funny. Martin Maldonado, another old friend, he lined out to Shawnuel, who had a nice heads-up play and doubled off the runner at third to end the inning. I had to laugh about Machado getting that double because all that Soriano had thrown was sinkers, and that's what you do in spring training. You're like, I'm going to work on this pitch. Yeah. And Machado was like, well, I know what's coming, and if it's up, I'm going to hit it. So that was great to see from Soriano. Again, like you mentioned, big breakout candidate this year for the Angels. And not just because, we're fans of the team. That's the dialogue around baseball right now regarding José Soriano.
And the conversation, obviously, with the Angels is they need an ace and they need somebody that can lead this rotation. We know that Yusei Kikuchi is going to be the guy that starts on opening day, rightly so. However, I think somebody like José Soriano might be a pitcher in this rotation that we're going to go, well, I really like that guy. John, there's Garrett Richard vibes in my heart when it comes to José Soriano. Like, didn't really know what Richards was going to do. And then suddenly he's 15-5 one season, right? He came out, pitched really well, and hopefully he can avoid injury like Richards couldn't, because if he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be a really good power arm for the Halos this season and moving forward.
I got to love that power sinker too. Having a sinker hitting 98 to 100 sometimes is pretty fun to see. Mike, we got to see Garrett McDaniels again. Remember, he's the lefty the Angels got in the Rule 5 draft from the Dodgers. He has to be on the 26-man roster or be returned to the Dodgers. Now, the contention there is that he's only had about 3 innings above high A, and so it's kind of an interesting dynamic of, can this guy handle major league hitting? Well, he did get 3 groundouts, including 1 to major leaguer Luis Ariz. Great separation of speeds between his sinker and slider. He was 93, 94 on the sinker, and then 83 to 86 on the slider. That's what you want, so you can create some deception, get guys out in front of the slider. You almost wonder if that higher slider velocity makes it play more like a cutter.
Yeah.
And in fact, this is going off the StatCast register of the pitch, but perhaps it is a cutter. And so, yeah, you kind of want it's got the same movement, just when there's a higher velo on a slider, it tends to move a little tighter like a cut fastball. So good separation of speeds nonetheless for Gary McDaniels. He's got a quick inning there. Brock Burke got into this game. He figures to be in the Angels bullpen. I'm a big fan of his. Remember, he's the one who had a 9.22 ERA with the Rangers last year. Then the Angels were able to scoop him up, and then he had a 3.54 ERA in 21 appearances the rest of the season.
That's development.
That figures to be the Matt Moore replacement who signed a deal with the Red Sox recently. He had another quick inning, except for a walk to Jason Hayward, but 18 pitches, 3 swings and misses, and 1 called strike for Brock Burke. And then George Klassen, top Angels prospect, one of the 3 top 100 prospects the Angels have in their minor league system. He got into the game in the 5th, didn't he?
Yeah, felt really good to see him out there. And we got a small sample size of Klassen. Great velocity on the fastball, between 95, 97. Had some command issues, but he's going to work on that. And that's kind of been the narrative around him. Needs to work on that. His slider was up. His fastball was down the middle. That's where the 2 hits were given up because of those 2 pitches, right?
Yeah, he got through the inning without giving it any runs. And like you were saying, we got a small sample of him. And it's everything we know about him so far.
Yeah.
It's great velocity, great arm, but also needs to work on the command, that sort of thing.
I do want to point out too, we've mentioned Machado, we've mentioned Hayward, we've mentioned Luis Ariz. These are all the starters for the Padres. And Soriano and Klassen and these guys, they faced them and did well. And so that's a good sign. Sometimes in spring training, you feel like you're playing old school Ken Griffey Jr. baseball because you're like, who's that guy? Right? Like, where'd he come from? But this game yesterday was one of those games where our good pitchers were facing their good hitters and came out on top, which is why sometimes the numbers can be deceptive in spring training. When it's 14-1, you're like, oh man, Angel pitching sucks. Yeah, that's because Mike Frisch pitched, right? Like that's because John was on the mound, right? And now you get to see like, oh wow, these guys really came through and did well against some of their best hitters. And Padres really have a strong lineup.
I don't know. My road to the show, John Frisch, on the show. He's a pretty good pitcher. Jack Dashwood came in, our second time seeing him. Same kind of thing as last time, Mike. He was a little bit wild.
Yeah.
Tons of sinking fastballs above the zone. But he did get through the inning, only giving up a 4-pitch walk. And it happened to be to Ethan Salas, the Padres' number 1 prospect, by the way. And he didn't have to do anything. He just had to watch the pitches go out of the zone. And so that was the only issue that Dashwood had, was just more location stuff. Still a big fan of him. I think that he's going to be something special. Obviously not ready for the majors. Still has some control issues to work out. And then, Mike, a name that I was unfamiliar with and didn't realize that the Angels had signed on February 13th was Sean Anderson. He got a minor league deal with the Angels on February 13th. Has some major league experience. Has never really translated what was good about him in the minors to the majors. But he's going to be some non-roster pitching depth. Going to be pitching in AAA, presumably. So that's another backup arm that they have. Of course, he's not on the roster, so they would need to, move some pieces around. But he was able to finish the game. Not a lot of offense in this 2-1 game, but we did get some fun moments from the young guys at the end of the game. Nelson Rada made a nice running catch in center field where he, dropped down to catch it, slide and rolled and everything. That was really excellent to see. There's a point I want to make about Nelson Rada because his name has come up a lot, especially in our comment section.
Yeah.
And I just want to address something. We know that his defense is elite, but we have to remember that the defense is not the question here. He is 19 years old. He was in AA last year. Super overmatched.
Yep.
Very overmatched. In fact, he had a 234 batting average, 331 on base, 269 slugging, and a 600 OPS. Now, I will say he has the gun show going on coming into spring this year, but that the fact that he was overmatched in AA last year. That's a little bit by design. They wanted to see how he could handle competition in AA. And remember, when you're around that age 20 to 24 bracket, you're going to be in AA. You're going to be competing with people who are on your same skill level. And Nelson Rada, 19 years old last season, 18 the year before, he was overmatched. But that's also kind of the point. He's not really ready for the bigs. He is elite defensively, and he will continue to be. But he's not close to being MLB ready. They need to give him another year, probably in AA, to see how he's grown and reevaluate. If he comes out of AA with a great season, then we can start talking about Nelson Rada possibly making the team here down the road. As much as people complain about the Angels rushing prospects, Nelson Rada is somebody I want to be patient with.
Right. Denzer Guzman came into this game, Johnny, led off the 8th with a solid triple. Bryce Teodosio drove him in with a sacrifice fly. Then the guy you mentioned, Nelson Rada, got hit by a pitch with the bases loaded, which brought in the second run. And I think it was Swilly Sports that tweeted, "Do not hit my future center fielder."
Yes, that was great.
I love that.
Swilly.
I love that. Kyron Paris had a ground out that was 109 miles an hour off the bat. And they said on the broadcast that he spent some time with Aaron Judge's instructor, and that's helped him out with his new batting stance and swing. Now, we have an everydayer that I think every show last year made a comment and said, got to teach Aaron Judge swing, right? And then they were back in the comments recently, and to that everydayer, Kyron Paris was with Aaron Judge's instructor. So apparently they were listening to you. So that's
shout out to JCH on the call, but JCH, you don't have to comment that anymore. We'd love for you to talk about other things. That would be fantastic. Yes. But he got what he wanted with Kyron Paris. And the good news, Mike, seems like Kyron Paris might actually turn a corner and be a viable option this year. He is on the 40-man roster. Personally, like you and I have been talking about the infield all off season. Like, what are they going to do about this? What are they going to do about that? Zach Neto's not starting the season. He was not anyone that was at the top of my list when we were having those conversations. But here's the thing. He is only 23 years old. Mm-hmm. He was a second-round pick of the Angels. I noticed this. I was quite surprised. He's not in the top 30 prospects on MLB Pipeline as of 2024. Now, they're working on reevaluating those for 2025. But Baseball America does have him as 21st in the Angels' top 30 for 2025. Baseball America also had him as 4th in 2024. So that kind of shows you one thing that I think is interesting about the Angels minor league system, and probably why their evaluations are always so low, because Kyron Paris is at the top of everyone's list. He's a Billy Epler pick, top of everybody's top 30 list. However, he fell from 4th, according to Baseball America last year, to 21st this year. And that's because of the infusion of other talent that they've gotten through the draft and international free agency, things like that, the trades that they made during the trade deadline last year. So all that to say, I hope that he has a chance to take his new batting stance and his swing into the season, do some damage in the minor leagues, show everybody that, hey, when you get the call to come up to the majors, I think that he could do some damage and be a really good player for the Halos at some point, that they, might need him in the infield as they've done in the past. Maybe it will be a turnaround season for him. So exciting stuff from Kyron Paris. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up on the show, what's it going to take for Christian Moore to make the opening day roster? Will it take a position change in the infield? We're going to talk about that coming right up.
Johnny, I mentioned on the show that the wife and I are going to the gym, and we started at the beginning of the year. She started earlier, right? We're still committed to it, which is really great. And one of the things that we're having to pay attention to is that as we get a bit older, because that's happening, it's easy for us to just grab like the sweet snacks, the sugary snacks. I'm so guilty of that. So that's why I love Wonderful Pistachios. They're delicious and nutritious. So Super Halo Mom is really proud of me. You can find a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. It's one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling full and fueled longer. And I love them because it's a great snack that doesn't, pack on the pounds. My youngest daughter said to me yesterday, "Dad, I don't mean to be rude, but it looks like you've lost some of that dad bod belly
there you
stuff
go.
around you. And I was like, that's not rude. That's a nice compliment, right? She's like, well, I don't want you to think you were fat.
I thought she was going to say, Dad, you're looking a little thick these days. But I'm glad it was the other way.
Got a great compliment. I think part of it is because I'm eating healthy. I'm eating wonderful pistachios. Now, I love the no shell variety. It's perfect to grab and go on a busy day. I take them to work with me, which is great because then I can snack and I'm not eating all the treats around the workplace. Also, John, you love the in-shell option, which are great for baseball
fidgeter,
games.
So I like to tear open the shells and things like that.
Yep. John loves that, especially baseball games. He and I go, we don't even talk. We just eat pistachios and watch the game, right? I love that. So get snackin, get crackin with a snack that packs the protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Every dayers, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. We're continuing our conversation about how the Angels are handling things headed into the 2025 season. Mike, Christian Moore has been making quite the impression, not just with the Angels, but around baseball, hasn't he?
Yeah, people are talking about him, including MLB Network had a conversation about him just the other day. Now, Ron Washington has been impressed by Christian Moore, and how can you not? I mean, just in the few glimpses we've had of him in spring, I've really been excited about this guy. Ron said that Christian Moore is a super athlete, and I'm not just talking about baseball. I thought if he was a basketball player, he'd be the same, or if he was a football player, he'd be the same. He's just a super athlete, and he knows how to absorb information and apply it. He's been applying it, and I've been very impressed. John, I think that that's a great compliment to a young player like Christian Moore, right?
I'm very impressed. I'm sorry, I had to do a Seinfeld reference. Now, here's the thing. Christian Moore has torn it up in Double-A last year. Remember, he was in Single-A, and before the Single-A 66ers even had a home game, he was promoted to Double-A. Yeah. So we didn't get a chance to go to San Bernardino to watch him. Dang it. So hopefully maybe we'll see him on the Major League Club. We'll get to a game and see him. But he did tear it up with Double-A, hitting .322 with 5 home runs and a .911 OPS in 23 games before hurting his knee. Now, so far in spring, no sign of any knee issues. Angels are really excited to have him around. I mentioned the other day, I think it was Moncada doing the Washington drills. Renjiva was standing there watching it. Moore walks by. There's a great buddy moment. So feels like he's fitting right in, and that's really great to see. Right now, they're having him play second base, and they're going to try him at third base, but they didn't start this during spring. They actually started it in the instructional league. And because of that, the Angels are planning on working him at both spots during spring training.
Yeah, Wash said that he plays third base pretty good. Pretty good. He also said it's wide open. It's freelancing at third base. He's kind of figuring out where people are going to play. He said when it comes to second base, he wants to see some growth. Wash wants to see some growth from Christian Moore. According to Wash, he said Christian has got to make decisions. That's what I want to see at second base. The type of decisions he makes. Third base, you do or you don't. You will or you won't. I love the Washisms there because second base, you do have to make decisions. Where am I throwing this? Where am I turning? Third base is really like, well, I'm going to get it or I'm not going to go get it, right?
Yeah.
It is the hot corner.
Do I throw it to second or do I throw it to first?
Right. So a couple questions here, Johnny. First question is, I'd love your thoughts on, in order for Christian Moore to make this team, do you think he needs to prioritize playing at third base instead of second base with the way that the roster is lining up right now?
I don't know so much that it's he needs to prioritize it. I think it's what the team feels like he needs to prioritize. And what I mean by that is if he's somebody who can do both, well, that's a big boon for him. And so to say that if Christian Moore can play third and play second, well, that's the kind of guy I want on my team. Right now, you're relying on somebody like Kevin Newman or Luis Renjiva to do that for you because Moncada has played second in the past.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time.
He's kind of just a third baseman, right?
He's kind of just a third baseman. And so that's kind of, it is what it is. When it comes to Christian Moore making the team and being versatile, of course, that's a huge boon for him. But Mike, we said this before the season started because we were having a lot of conversation again about that infield. It was Christian Moore needs to give the Angels every reason to not put him on this roster. He has to be undeniable. He has to be somebody that they look at in spring and go, dang, we need his bat in the lineup.
Yeah.
We need him in the infield. And so to add third base to his repertoire is only going to be a good thing for him. I am a little hesitant because we talk about the idea that the Angels rush up their prospects.
Yeah.
And when we've talked about the infield and it was like, oh, they got Tim Anderson, they got JD Davis and Scott Kingery, who was a top prospect who hasn't panned out. I was wary of all of that. And it was like, I'd rather give one of our guys a shot than go to somebody who, has been there, done that.
Mm-hmm.
However, watching those guys in spring, now it's only been 3-4 games now.
Right.
And so watching those guys in spring, I feel a little bit more comfortable, especially with somebody like Kingery. I feel like he's been doing really well and making a case for himself. And to me, coming into the season with somebody like a Kingery or perhaps a Tim Anderson or a JD Davis, whatever they decide to do, and Christian Moore starts in the minor leagues, I think that's okay. Because it's not as if you can't cut one of those guys, send them back to AAA, whatever the case may be, and bring up a Christian Moore. Now, having said that, there's a lot of non-roster invitees. And so you're going to have to make some room on the 40-man in order to get these guys on the 26-man club. So that also plays into the equation. But going back to your question of Christian Moore making this team, I'm not going to be mad if he does. At the same time, I am feeling more and more comfortable each day with the major league quality players that they have signed for depth and to come in while Zach Neto is still recovering from the shoulder surgery. What do you think he needs to do to make the opening day roster? Should he make the opening day roster? What are your thoughts?
If they're going to start him, he should be on the opening day roster. If they're not going to start him, then he's not a backup. He's not your top pick.
He's got to play every day.
You got to put him down in the minor leagues. And I think I'm going to put him in AA. That's where I would start him, just because it's more pro ball style there. And I would let him tear it up. And if he tears it up, then bring him up, because that's where most of the Angels come from, is AA. If he's going to be a starter, I think that then you can run with him at second base, especially with Zach Neto out, if he really proves himself. And here's what I mean by proving himself. I do think that I would love to see him being really capable at second, but also really capable at third, because Wash has indicated, I'm going to have some guys moving around, even in the outfield. And so I think that you just can't be stuck to one position. And so I think he really needs to prove his abilities and that he's capable at second base, but also at third base. Too, John, I think he's just got to have a banger spring offensively. I think it's got to be 300 to 400 batting average. I think he's got to have a few home runs, have a few doubles. I also think that those late inning moments, like we saw just a couple of days ago against the Mariners, I think you have to see that more often. What is he doing in high pressure situations? I get it was later in the inning, ninth inning, 2 outs, and it's not the best pitcher on the mound, but those are still, sweaty palms moments, right?
Still got to win the game. Yeah,
exactly. And so him coming through in those moments, what he does in 0-2 counts and how he battles back, what he does with runners on, does he move the runners over? Those would be the things that I would be looking for. And with Zach Neto out, and if he's going to be out for a month, it seems like it would be worthwhile to put him at second base, see what he does, and then you can open up a roster spot, because I think that's why Jose Suarez is on this roster. Easily DFA, right? Put him down, move him aside, right? He's going to have a banger year, right? He'll win 20 games, and then
just to spite you.
Well, and if he does, good. Please do that. But I think that he has to play. Christian Moore has to play, or you put him down in the minor leagues and let him develop.
There's one thing I want to bring up too, and that's this. As we continue spring training, we're going to see major league quality starters and relievers getting more and more innings in a game.
Yeah.
And here's what I mean to say. I need to see Christian Moore face, the Dylan Ceases of the world. I need to see him face any number of major league starters or relievers out there. And right now, he's batting a little lower in the order, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe it doesn't quite come around to him by the time the starting pitcher has finished up their reps for the day, which is usually 1 to 2 innings, or the team is running out, a AAA guy or a prospect or something like we saw with the Giants the other day. Mason Black is their number 8 prospect. Yeah. I want to see Christian Moore face major league pitching. And as we continue through spring training, I think he's going to get more and more opportunities to do that, right?
Yeah. One final thought on Christian Moore. I know that the conversation is always like, let him develop, don't rush him, those types of things. If he's good, let him play. If he's going to be major league capable and he's going to produce, then let him play. Throw development aside. If he's going to be a really good player for the Halos, or even just a average major league player this year for the Halos, then stick him at second base and let's run with that, because this team needs fresh energy. They need fresh players and they need fresh hype. And I think he brings all of those things to the table.
Mike, we heard from Yoan Moncada, who was signed late in the offseason. We sat around all offseason wondering what the Angels were going to do with their infield. And he's actually somebody I wanted on my GM episode to be a backup off the bench, or, that was when circumstances were a little bit different.
Yeah.
But now it looks like he figures to be the starting third baseman. Said recently that he's hungry to prove himself, believes that it starts with being himself, right?
Yeah. Real quick, how many people did you get right on your GM episode? Did you have 3 guys that
Moncada.
came through?
I gotta look and see.
Yeah, we have to go back and look.
There was somebody else.
You've been pretty successful the last couple of years.
D'Arnaud was one of them.
Me, on the other hand, I suck. Who's the smarter Halo bro? I think we all know. John, when you talk about Moncada, he is wanting to prove himself. And they asked him about like how he's going to do that. And he said, well, nothing really changes for me. I'm just going to keep doing what I do. I'm going to play baseball and be as much of a help as I can to help this team win as many games as we can. And so then he was asked about the struggles over the last few years. So if you're going to be yourself, right? Like, you struggled the last few years. And he said, hey, it's no lie. Had a rough year last year. We all know what happened in Chicago at the same time. I respect the decision that was made, had to deal with it, but that's in the past and I'm ready to go. And one of the things we've talked about on this show, and Ken Rosenthal brought it up on Foul Territory, is Moncada hasn't forgotten how to play ball.
No.
There's just been a lot of injuries and a lot of drama and a lot of issues. So he's still the same player. He just needs to prove that again. And so I love that he's like, I don't need to do anything else. I just need to do what I've done in the past and continue to be myself.
He's got to be healthy, and he's out of the terrible situation that is the Chicago White Sox, where all of the old Angels coaches went. So good thing that he got out of the South Side, right? But here's the thing. He was owed a lot of money.
Yeah.
And of course, with the injury history and the track record, he's not going to get the option that was offered to him by the team. And so they, obviously they turned down that option. They paid him out, and now he's here with the Angels. Plus, your whole championship caliber core is gone, Mike. The 2021 White Sox have completely dissipated, and they're all over MLB right now. And Moncada was part of that. So it made sense for the White Sox to move on. Who knows how they're going to turn out this season. But I am excited to have Moncada on the team. And Ron Washington spoke of Yoan Moncada as well. He said, when you say he's got to prove something, I think that puts too much pressure on him. What you want to do is get them in an environment, get them relaxed, and get them to work the way they're supposed to work consistently every day. And the talent that they have will show up. Now, an interesting note here is if Moncada stays on the field, which I feel like he's going to be able to. He might have some bumps and bruises along the way, but the fact is, when he produces, he's got a career average 756 OPS, and that's a huge boost for the Angels, because last year they ranked 27th in the majors in OPS at third base with 601, Mike. So as we always talk about, just be league average. Just show up and swing a bat, please, because that's all we need when it comes to our third baseman. And I think Moncada easing into this situation is going to be really good for him, right?
Yeah, Wash said that he believes that Moncada is going to have an impact offensively and defensively. He said on Moncada's hitting, Wash thinks that he has the ability to really power the ball out of the ballpark. He's proven that he can do it again, especially with a short porch in right field. But we're not looking for him to be a home run hitter, but he has that ability. He said he wants Moncada to be somebody that turns the lineup over. You and I've talked a lot about that and wanting to make sure that these guys don't get themselves into situations where they could potentially score runs and then get themselves out of those same situations. Like, keep moving the ball, keep making contact, move that lineup over, right?
He's got the ability to take walks too, which is something that I appreciate. Yeah. Wash talked about his defense, and he said, I think he's someone that can be consistent down at third base with the work. And one of the reasons why Wash believes that is because he's working with Moncada,
Yep.
and he's having him do the famous Washington drills. He said, we whipped his butt, but at the end of the day, he really started catching on. We told him it's going to take 3 days for him to get comfortable. And by the third day, we're going to start holding him accountable. It was funny. Somebody mentioned on a tweet about the Moncada video doing the Washington drills. And I think somebody was making fun of the fact that it seems so basic.
Yeah.
At the same time, this person who tweeted, I wish I could find that tweet again. So just shout them out. Basically, they said, we watched the Yankees lose the World Series because they couldn't do the fundamentals.
That was
so I don't want
Dodgers strategy. Yeah.
Right. I don't want to hear anything about Washington drills being too basic or too silly or anything. Like I say it all the time. Freddie Freeman to this day still does the drills before a game and before practice. So I think that's an important factor in the equation.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Yoan Moncada on our team. I know that there's a lot of question marks about him, John, but I think that he is going to be the guy that holds down third base. And reality is, if he's the guy that holds down third base, you're probably going to have Rengifo at second base. Then it would make sense, going back to our last segment, it would make sense to have Christian Moore be in the minor leagues to develop and continue to grow. And John, if Moncada can be somebody that could just be average for the Halos, this is going to be a lineup that could be stretched. And that's, I hate the what if conversations, because it's always that with the Halos, but I'm kind of excited about what this guy could potentially be as a switch hitter for the Halos, as a defensive guy for the Halos, and as somebody that can really slot in anywhere in the lineup. You could hit him high, you could hit him middle, and you could even hit him low.
Let me finish with this. This is not a what if of, man, what if Anthony Rendon is actually healthy this year? Oh, what if Tyler Wade just needed an opportunity to play full-time shortstop? What if, this is not a what if. Yoan Moncada's been there and done that. And really it comes down to health. And I know you can say, well, what if he's not healthy? Right. But the Angels have plenty of depth at this point to go to if he's not healthy, which is a far different conversation than what we were having at the beginning of the offseason.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. And what if your second listen is Locked On MLB with our friend Soli? You can find his show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, be sure you give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram, whether you're watching or listening. Come on over to today's show. Get in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. Hit that subscribe button. We're hoping for 10K by opening day. Mike, what do we have on deck for Thursday's show?
Caden Dana has already pitched in spring training, and there's some questions about, man, he didn't really do that well and kind of struggled, but not according to the coaches. What the coaches saw really impressed them. So we're going to share with you what the coaches shared with all of us tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right, looking forward to that conversation. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Thursday. I hit the right button this time.
Good job.
I pushed the buttons. I talk and